back to Leading Entrepreneurs of the World. I'm Jonathan Kitchens, CMO at One Business World. Leading Entrepreneurs of the World features entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders presenting on cutting-edge topics in the latest industry developments. Today, we are so excited to welcome global entrepreneur Alexandra Cooley. Ali has been a lifelong environmental advocate and co-founding Greenworks Lending, the nation's largest provider of CPACE financing. She has channeled her passion for combating climate change while also helping to support sustainable economic growth and development of the commercial real estate industry across the country. In 2015, Ali and her co-founder, Jessica, founded Greenworks Lending to bring benefits of CPACE financing to building owners and developers across the country. Welcome, Ali. We are so excited to have you today and to hear about the great things happening at Greenworks. Before we launch into your presentation, I was wondering if you could just give us a quick overview of how you ended up in Greenworks and how you decided to kind of join up with Jessica and found this. And then just that little bit of maybe background for people that aren't familiar with CPACE financing to kind of bring them up to speed real quick.
Sure. So I'll talk a lot about CPACE in my presentation, and I'm happy to just give a brief overview now. In terms of my background, I think like a lot of entrepreneurs, I came at it because I was obsessed with a problem, and unfortunately that problem was climate change. So early in my career, I actually ended up working in management consulting, focused specifically on oil and gas. And I couldn't stop thinking about the impact I was having in a negative way. And so I decided to make a career switch. I ended up getting my MBA and a Master of Environmental Management. And through that program, I ended up learning about the Connecticut Green Bank just as it was getting started. And the Connecticut Green Bank, I'll talk about it a little bit in my presentation, but it was really the first of its kind. It was a public entity that was set up to really encourage private capital to come in and fund clean energy measures in the state of Connecticut. So I joined right out of business school, and I met Jessica, my co-founder, the first day and learned about CPACE and really saw how transformative it could be for the commercial real estate sector. So together with the team at the Green Bank, we worked to build a program in Connecticut and then saw that it could really be nationwide and could really create a solution to scaling clean energy in commercial buildings. So in 2015, we started Greenworks Lending and have been at it since then.
Awesome. All right. Well, since you're probably going to cover, as you said, CPACE in your presentation, I don't think we need to be redundant with that, but I'm just going to turn it over to you so you can present on how things are going.
Great. I'll share my screen.
Great.
So great. So thank you so much for hosting me, Jonathan. I thought I'd talk a little bit about CPACE as a case study for scaling solutions to the climate crisis. And I talked a little bit about my background, but again, Greenworks Lending is a provider of commercial property assessed clean energy, which I will get into in just a couple minutes. And I co-founded the company in 2015. We're a nationwide provider, we're a nationwide lender to commercial buildings who want to install clean energy or energy efficiency. But backing up a whole lot, one of the problems, so I mentioned I came at this because I was really focused on mitigating climate change. And one of the major problems with climate change is that it cuts across so many of our major systems that make our day-to-day life enjoyable and livable. And those systems have been around for such a long time. And what that means is that there's a really healthy ecosystem of suppliers and financing that lowers the cost to the end user and just creates a lot of demand, creates a reduction in pricing, which drives up demand. And again, just creates a very large ecosystem that brings a lot of benefit to consumer, but makes it to the consumers, but makes it really hard for climate technologies, which are new technologies that would deliver the same benefit, to really break in. And it's doable, but of course it takes time, right? So if you think about how long it takes to scale a technology, it takes a really long time from the first instance until it really reaches widespread demand. And just 3 examples here. centralized HVAC is common in most buildings across the US. The first system was installed in 1816, and it wasn't until the 50s, almost 100 years later, that it became commonplace. It took that long to build that ecosystem and that infrastructure. Same thing with the gas station. So these are ubiquitous. They help us get around. It's a mainstay in our lives. The first system was installed in the late 1800s, and it really wasn't until the 1920s that there became enough gas stations to really drive around the country. Again, 40 years later. And then again with electricity, obviously Edison invented the light bulb in 1879, but it really wasn't until almost 100 years later that most Americans had access to electricity. So again, it just takes time to build that reliability and that infrastructure to scale solutions. And of course, we don't have a lot of time. Most scientists agree that by 2030, we have to reduce our emissions drastically to avoid the major impacts of climate change. And then the reason CPACE is such a great case study is because it shows how existing structures can help accelerate solutions to climate change. CPACE really used existing structures in the financial markets and public-private partnerships to start to scale clean energy in buildings. And that's important because buildings are a huge emitter of climate change, of greenhouse gas emissions. For instance, commercial real estate in the US is responsible for 30% of greenhouse gas emissions, of the US greenhouse gas emissions. And there are so many proven ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in buildings. I list them here on the right. And the technologies are proven, they're there, they're available, but the problem is that they require a large amount of investment for small savings over time. And most building owners don't want to take that bet. Either they want to use the cash for something else, or they're going to move out of the property before the measures pay off. And so there really does need to be an attractive method of financing these measures, but of course that takes scale. And so you're kind of in this chicken and an egg situation. But where did it begin in the first place? So in 2007, a municipal government employee was looking to finance a solar system. And he was running into the same problem, right? So there's no robust market for finance. There was no robust market for financing solar systems yet. And he thought, well, there is, right? Solar is a public benefit. There's been a system in place since the 1700s that allows property owners to finance public benefits. It's called the special taxing assessment. And Ben Franklin created the first one to finance the Philadelphia Fire District. And this guy thought, why not use that to finance solar? Why can't we use this to finance a solar system? It's a public benefit. All I have to do is get the city of Berkeley to agree that it's a public benefit, and I can raise really attractive capital because I'll be secured by a tax assessment. Luckily, the city of Berkeley said yes, and today 36 states plus DC have PACE programs enabled. And it's really what it is. It's very simple. The state says, we believe clean energy measures are a public benefit. And so it allows the building owner to create its own special taxing assessment district on its property to install the measures that make sense for that building owner within the confines of what the state has deemed as a public benefit. So solar panels, energy efficiency, windows, lighting, HVAC, whatever the state thinks is public benefit can be installed using this, this tax assessment. And what it did was it also meant that it creates a credit enhancement because it's a senior tax assessment on a piece of real estate. And what we saw at the Green Bank and what most of the players in the commercial PACE industry saw was that it's really uniquely suited for the commercial real estate market where there's a lack of standardization. There's a huge variety of use cases in the real estate market, everything from office to grocery store to warehouses to gas stations to apartment buildings. It's a really large segment of the market. And unfortunately, that lack of standardization means that there aren't great financial products available to about 2/3 of the commercial real estate market. And so PACE, as a way of creating that credit enhancement, that senior obligation on a piece of real estate, actually helped to standardize. The promise of CPACE was that it would standardize this mid-market, and it would help those building owners make decisions around clean energy measures and installing those clean energy measures on their properties in a way that made financial sense to them. And what was really helpful is the public sector got it. So after Berkeley passed their program, we saw widespread adoption nationwide of both residential and commercial PACE programs. There was also support from entities like the Connecticut Green Bank, which I mentioned before. And their goal was really to try to create those structures that would prove the concept and build a prototype around which more institutions could come in and drive down the cost of capital. And it worked. So that public sector focus really did help to increase standardization across the market and created standardization around what the CPACE financial product could look like and does look like. So in 2014, there was the first securitization of residential PACE. In 2017, the first securitization of commercial PACE. And today there's been almost $10 billion of PACE investment. So $10 billion of clean energy investment in residential and commercial real estate across dozens of securitizations and several platforms. And I mentioned securitizations because they're really important. So they are the way that the lowest cost of capital can wind up to the property owners. Because CPACE is a senior lien, as I mentioned, it creates a lot of demand for investors once you can reach the scale at which the cost of doing a securitization makes sense. Investors love the product because it's a green investment. And as most folks on this call know, many financial institutions have issued mandates to support clean energy financing, and PACE fits right there. There's already a law saying that the measures that are installed are by default a public benefit. Because of the seniority, it also creates that predictability and de-risks the product. So that brings down the cost of capital and increases demand. And what the public sector did was to create that scale by passing policies across the country and by creating programs that helped prove the concept. And you can see that there's been a really shortened period to scaling this product because it used existing structures that de-risked things for investors. It financed existing technologies that building owners were already familiar with. And so we've really started to see it scale in recent years, which is just really exciting. And especially one of the things that nobody foresaw, of course, was COVID. But one of the benefits to CPACE beyond the climate impact is the economic impact. And COVID-19 really highlighted this. What CPACE ended up becoming in COVID-19 was not just a way of financing energy reduction in buildings. That's a given. But it also became a way for the commercial real estate market to access alternative sources of liquidity, to keep making the upgrades that they needed to make in their buildings as traditional sources started to pull back. And so it ended up being not another benefit that CPACE can provide to local communities and buildings. And we really started to see it accelerate as well in 2020 because of these benefits that it brought to local business owners. And I always like to end by putting a bit of meat on the bone. So it's really fun to talk about kind of the high level of how CPACE began and what it is and why it became an important part of financing clean energy in commercial buildings. But it's always fun to look at the individual buildings that we've been able to help. This one was a portfolio of multifamily buildings with 60-year-old heating and cooling equipment. And we came in and were able to help them finance new HVAC in all of their buildings. Similarly, hospitality has been, of course, hard hit by COVID. This was a historic renovation of a hotel in downtown El Paso, which is which will be kind of a major centerpiece of the revitalization of the downtown. And we were able to help them complete the capital stack and upgrade their energy system so that the cost of operations will be lower going forward. Manufacturing, of course, is always looking for ways to cut costs, and in many states, solar is a way to do that. But of course, the financing needs to be there because they have equipment that they need to buy with their cash on hand and employees that they need to hire. And so we were able to help many manufacturing firms, in particular this one, install solar panels and reduce their cost of electricity. And then last, this is actually a COVID recapitalization story. So this is a school in upstate New York. that needed financing to upgrade their properties so that they could start to expand their operations. And when COVID hit, they didn't have as much access to financing to do that. So we were able to come in, help them upgrade their properties to be more energy efficient, and also provide them that alternative source of liquidity to help them complete their plans as they went through COVID. And then last, again, I came at this personally. I said in the beginning, I came at this personally because I wanted to have an impact on climate change. And one of the things that we do track regularly is how much impact our financing has had on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And so this is something we love to look at. The total energy savings for property owners has surpassed 440 million. So what that means is that not only have we had the impact where we're of the equivalent of reforesting 100 square miles of land with trees, but we've also saved small businesses and building owners $440 million in energy costs over the life of the measures that we've financed. And for us, this is kind of what keeps us going as a company. And one of the reasons I think CPACE can be such a great case study for scaling climate solutions in buildings.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Allie. You guys are doing some amazing things, very exciting. A couple questions we had and in discussion with some people to learn a few more things. As you mentioned, COVID-19 has been really difficult on the commercial real estate industry as a whole. Some areas being impacted maybe a little more than others, but across the board, it's created some pretty uncertain times. Do you see, or where do you anticipate as tenants start looking for different amenities than maybe they once were? Is this an opportunity? Do you see this as an opportunity for more of these green initiatives to make an appearance in the thought process while building owners are going in and gutting or updating or everything else, so that tenants can actually benefit as well from what's going on now with the changes in CRE from the pandemic?
Absolutely. So I think there will be kind of three ways that CPACE can be helpful. So first, a lot of property owners are needing to make upgrades, not just around amenities, but also around health and safety. And a lot of that touches on measures that CPACE can finance. So upgraded HVAC, touchless technology. We've seen a lot of demand for that once COVID hit. The other thing is, of course, cost. So a lot of energy efficiency measures can significantly reduce energy bills, but it's really a matter of finding the upfront financing to fund those investments so that you can benefit from those savings over time. And of course, there is sometimes a challenge in passing those savings through to the tenants and making that investment attractive to tenants. So CPACE allows a lot of flexibility there because it is a tax assessment. In many lease structures, it can actually be passed through to tenants, and the energy savings can also be passed through to tenants. So it enables more flexibility for building owners to create those structures. And then last, again, there's been a pullback, especially in certain sectors, a short-term pullback of traditional financing. And so building owners still need to make upgrades. And one of the nice things about CPACE is it almost creates a situation where if the building owner is willing to go that extra mile and install energy efficiency, they can access very attractive financing because of the credit enhancement that CPACE provides. So it almost creates an incentive without the public tax money going towards that incentive. So I think that's another way that we can use the pandemic can be helpful in increasing clean energy throughout the real estate sector.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's hard for me to imagine that there are too many property owners that wouldn't be excited about getting involved with that, because that opening of what they can gain access to with the financing style that CPACE offers is really incredible. So I'm excited to see where that goes kind of post-pandemic, when all of this whenever that is post-pandemic, but that'll be fun to watch. Another question that we had was, where do you see, you guys have financed pretty much any type of commercial real estate that's out there in various projects from, gut to just upgrades. Do you see a radical shift in any particular industry happening as kind of that green initiative kind of becomes more prominent, maybe than it once was over the last, let's say, decade or so? Or is it kind of more unilateral in adjusting to these availabilities and shifts?
It's a great question. Certainly, buildings that have more of an energy burden have always been interested in CPACE because that's such a significant piece of their P&L. So I mentioned warehousing, grocery stores, things that have a lot of buildings that have a lot of energy load, basically, have always really been focused on reducing that energy load, and CPACE is a way of doing that. Going forward, I think it's really going to be more dependent on location. So what we're seeing is a lot more focus from the public sector on creating incentives and zoning requirements and building requirements around clean energy. And we expect that will continue to drive demand as well, because I think you can look at New York City passing its building benchmarking law, and PACE is a way of upgrading buildings to come in compliance with those requirements without that large upfront investment. And so we're starting to see a lot of demand from those types of programs. And then I think, just in terms of, not necessarily driven by green, but what I mentioned before, property types that need alternative access to liquidity. So we saw hospitality and office, for instance, during the pandemic, needing kind of a patient partner on the capital side to weather a 24 or 36 month storm, or they need to upgrade in that time when the capital markets have pulled back. I think we'll start to see a lot of demand. We've seen a lot of demand there, and I think that will be sustained as we kind of go forward.
Yeah, that very, very much makes sense. And projects like this are very dependent on their, municipalities, county law, all kinds of things. So that's a great point on that. One last question that I have for you, though, maybe a little more personal question. Being a successful co-founder is a huge achievement, and you and Jessica have done something absolutely amazing. It's an incredible program doing awesome things. There should be, a dozen more companies that are as dedicated to doing great things within this kind of financial sector as well. But in this time of kind of trouble, as if we could say it like that, with the pandemic and everything going on, what advice would you give to an entrepreneur that is seeking to kind of grow their business and is looking to really kind of elevate, maybe in 2021, maybe into 2022, what they're doing in business, especially those women entrepreneurs out there that maybe in male-dominated industries, or in maybe industries that are in an infant stage and really are going to require a lot of work to develop it? And what advice would you give to them?
Well, first, there's no sugarcoating it. It's hard work and long hours. But second, I think there's a there's a mindset thing that I think has been very, very helpful. So one of the things that I think makes Greenworks a successful company is that there's kind of a focus on growth and learning. So rather than kind of really trying to take everything that happens as an opportunity. So for instance, when COVID hit, we could have said the commercial real estate industry probably doesn't want to install new things anymore, doesn't want to create new buildings anymore. But we sat down and we were like, how can we be helpful? So what are our customers going to be looking for? And we thought about, they're still going to need to switch out their boilers. They're still going to need sources of capital. They're still going to need resiliency measures. And, storms are not becoming less frequent. They still need generators. And so we kind of pivoted because we were both customer focused, but also thinking about ways that, you can use the event to grow your mission, which in ours is to install more clean energy measures on commercial buildings.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's never easy, but most good things that are worth doing are not. So,
well, if you're passionate about it, it doesn't feel like hard work, even if.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Any good books, podcasts, anything to recommend? Just random question off the top of my head, but.
Well, my pandemic hobby has been getting into learning about wine. So right now I'm reading a technical book on wine, but in terms of business books, I think there are a couple classics. Peter Drucker's book is a classic. Andy Grove's book is a classic.
Yeah.
And I can put them in kind of the notes if that's helpful.
Sure.
Yeah, and then a more kind of recent book that I read that I actually reread almost every year is called Essentialism, and it's really about knowing what to focus on in kind of in that moment. So one of the biggest resources, one of your most important resources as an entrepreneur is your focus, and so knowing kind of where to put that focus is going to be how you get the most return on your time. It's your most scarce resource. And this book, Essentialism, is just helpful in clarifying how to identify what those priorities should be.
Awesome. All great suggestions for sure. Okay, Allie, thank you so much again for your time, your participation in this series. Incredible work you're doing. Keep it up. I'm amazed, and we can't wait to watch you guys here at One Business World and Leading Entrepreneurs of the World develop and grow. We applaud your mission and vision. You guys are doing awesome things, and look forward to speaking with you again soon, and where you guys take Greenworks in the future. So,
thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Have a great one. Thank you.